Happy Halloween. I'm Cass. This All Hallows Eve, I've got a very special treat for all of you. A horrifying title whose star began in the wretched arcade, created by such a vile and soulless motherfucker that even the devil himself cowers in fear from it. Today's protagonist made his first appearance as an enemy in 1985's Ghosts and Goblins, the classic that became infamous for its high level of difficulty, which ended up spawning one of Capcom's most popular series. It was also the debut of this annoying red devil. Known as Firebrand, many players will pull out strands of their hair with how irritating he was in the game, and how early he was encountered in Ghosts and Goblins. And then he got his very own video game. Because Capcom. Gargoyle's Quest was a spin-off of the Ghosts and Goblins series, starring everybody's favorite irritating little gremlin. One thing that you may have noticed already is that in Ghosts and Goblins, Firebrand is colored red, but in the box art for Gargoyle's Quest, he's colored green. This wasn't too uncommon for the box art to not get the characters' colors correctly in early Game Boy games, most likely due to the lack of colors featured on the original Game Boy. In Wario Land 3, a Game Boy Color game I might add, they do the reverse. Wario has his usual yellow shirt on the box art, but in the game, his shirt is white. White! Anyway, Gargoyle's Quest was one of Capcom's earliest released titles on the system, as early as May of 1990 in some regions. Whether it remained one of their better aged ones is something that we'll find out as we embark on this Gargoyle's Quest. The story goes that the evil King Breaker once again threatens the Ghoul Realm and that only the Red Blaze can stop him. And that's about enough of the plot, let's jump straight into the gameplay. That's not a joke, by the way. I really do mean that's all there is to the plot. You're the hero, save the world. Yay! There's something else to discuss here, so let's just move on. Gargoyle's Quest is a blend of action platforming and an RPG-like setting. You explore the Ghoul Realm in search for items to progress and bosses to beat. As you explore, you can gain more weapons, better range strength, and more health points that give you a feeling of progression on this quest in... Gargoyle's Quest. Firebrand can hover for a short period of time by pressing A after he's jumped and cling to walls. He can't cling to every surface like spikes, but if you can see it, then there's most certainly a way to reach it. For 1990, there was really nothing to control quite like it. Being able to fly for a short time and cling to the side of a wall never felt so smooth or enjoyable. The closest that we would ever see on the Game Boy of this would be Kirby's Dream Land, but that game would come out until 2 years later. Yet, in spite of how much of a departure that this may have been for the genre, there's a certain familiarity to Capcom's earlier platformers like Bionic Commando that resonates from playing Gargoyle's Quest. The game that it bears the most resemblance from is, oddly enough, Mega Man. Like Mega Man, it features the same good old side-scrolling platform action, and like the Blue Bomber himself, your arsenal will quickly expand to deal with foes of all sorts. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a rejected Mega Man game turned into a newish IP. In fact, it predates the very first Mega Man game on Game Boy, Dr. Wily's Revenge in 1991. Most of all, like Mega Man, its greatest strength comes from the level design. Gargoyle's Quest takes full advantage of the hover wall cleaning mechanic and crafts some truly excellent levels based on it that don't just have you going from left to right, but up and down before reaching your destination, sometimes twisting and turning or containing multiple paths. It wasn't something that you saw too often in games back then, much less on the Game Boy, but it really works here, with each succeeding level building on top of every new mechanic introduced to you. And that applies to the bosses too, forgiving the final boss for being a copy of the previous one, except cheaper. However, with the majority of the focus on the action half of this action RPG, the RPG elements are a little less than undercooked and were clearly not given much attention. Sure, it gives the game a unique feel to it and helps differentiate itself from other platformers at the time, but just because something is unique doesn't necessarily mean it's good or that it works. In the case of Gargoyle's Quest, the RPG elements tend to undermine the action and feel underdeveloped. In addition, it's kind of an odd choice to have random encounters and an RPG-like overworld in a game like this, and talking to characters in a drop-down menu is not intuitive whatsoever. It probably would have been better off if they just removed the overworld in favor of a Mega Man-style select screen, since there's nothing off the beaten path, no extra health points to find, no extra secrets to uncover, nothing. It's kind of pointless really, outside of the ever-irritating random encounter, but thankfully, these encounter rates aren't too high and usually reward you with vials. Why you never drink these vials is beyond me, but they do serve as currency for extra lives, which is something you're going to need because Gargoyle's Quest is quite a challenging quest to complete. It's especially difficult in the early stages when your health is low and you can only take 2 hits. Once you get a few more health points, it becomes easier, but the game itself never becomes easy. It's a challenging title through and through that will constantly test you at every opportunity. It's the kind of game that'll frustrate you, but in a good way. It makes you want to keep coming back and maybe, just maybe, beat it this time. Or the next time. Or the next time. Really, the only major problem that Gargoyle's Quest has is the system it was built on, not the actual design of the game itself. The Game Boy was, even for its time, woefully outdated and technologically inferior to its competition. It could take a bomb or two during the Gulf War, but it could not deliver a deep, portable experience, especially during its early days. Had it been built on better software, many of the issues that Gargoyle's Quest has would not exist. There's also the arbitrary password system, but given this was an early Game Boy game, I am willing to overlook it since it is a rather short game that could be beaten on a single run, and the password isn't as long as some of the other ones that you might have seen on the system back then. Besides, if you have as bad of a memory as I do, you can always take a picture of it on your smartphone. The graphics, especially knowing that this was released in 1990 on Game Boy, are really good, with big, very detailed sprites and backgrounds that give Firebrand and the Ghoul Realm a ton of personality. There are times when the game suffers from some horrible slowdown, but when it's running at full speed, it looks great. The overworld map, yeah, it's not as impressive in comparison, but it still looks good for an early Game Boy game. And of course, there's the music. Do I really need to tell you how good the music is? This is Capcom in the 90s. Their soundtracks have nothing to give you but sheer auditory pleasure, and this game is no exception. Yoko Shimomura and an uncredited Harumi Fujita worked on Gargoyle's Quest score, and you can tell they really put their all into it, filling the game with memorable tunes from beginning to end. It's an all-around solid title and one of the Game Boy's best aged games. Even after 20 years, Gargoyle's Quest still holds up hauntingly well. Gargoyle's Quest is often forgotten among Capcom's more popular old-school titles like Bionic Commando, the Mega Man NES games, and of course Street Fighter II. But what sets it apart from its contemporaries makes it a unique experience, one worth trekking down a quest through it at least once. Getting a physical copy isn't too hard, but they can get pretty pricey for a Game Boy game. Luckily, you can also get this one via the Nintendo 3DS's Virtual Console for $4, which I recommend over its physical counterpart, mainly because you can actually pick up right where you left off, and don't have to worry about the password system, but also because for $4, Gargoyle's Quest is an absolute must-play. So that's the end for Gargoyle's Quest, but it's not the end for this Red Devil's Tale. For whatever reason, Gargoyle's Quest would spawn 2 sequels before being sentenced to a damnation of crossover fighting games and Project Cross Zone. There was Gargoyle's Quest 2, a prequel made for the NES in 1992, and Demon's Crest for the Super Nintendo 2 years later, both of which take the solid foundation of the original and put their own twist on it. If you're interested in learning more about either of these titles, I highly recommend checking out the Happy Video Game Nerds look at the Gargoyle's Quest trilogy. Until next year, happy Halloween.